SpongeGex here. With Donkey Kong being Nintendo's first game and star from 1981, he sure has had a messy history. Starting off in a trio of arcade and NES games where he wasn't even the main character. Over a decade later, in 1994, Rare reinvented him with their own trilogy, only to reveal that the original Donkey Kong is now a cranky, shriveled-up gorilla and his son is the new Donkey Kong, who took over the series from there. The Donkey Kong Country trilogy were considered great games with very innovative pre-rendered 3D graphics, but isn't it sad how Donkey Kong was only playable in the first game of his own series? He was barely even in the sequels, and I doubt most players were even able to make it far enough into the final battle where that's where he makes his appearances as a captive. Yeah, you gotta save Donkey Kong in the sequels, it's so weird. So, after a number of crossover games with Mario, Donkey Kong finally got his first 3D game on the N64 with Donkey Kong 64 in 1999. Not long after Banjo-Kazooie, even being made by a lot of the same people who worked on it. In fact, most people compare Donkey Kong 64 more akin to a Banjo-Kazooie game than an actual Donkey Kong Country game. Donkey Kong 64 was always my personal favorite Donkey Kong game, though it is a huge departure from what came before. It still involves jumping around for bananas, climbing up trees and across vines, but now there's 5 swappable playable characters, much larger worlds to explore, and the characters are armed with wacky projectile weapons, like the coconut gun. The game wasn't perfect, though. It would have been nice to have a button that allowed us to switch between the characters at will, and the minigames that are littered across this game, they are just a nightmare. They're so buggy, they're not fun to play, they're just a nightmare for completionists. But other than that, it's still a very fun, charming, and challenging game. Sadly, that was the last 3D platformer of Donkey Kong for the longest time. We were supposed to get 3 more Donkey Kong games by Rare across the Game Boy Advance and even GameCube, but they were all cancelled due to Microsoft's buyout of Rare. The Game Boy Advance games of Diddy Kong Pilot and Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers were eventually released as different games, including Banjo Pilot and It's Mr. Pants. Donkey Kong Racing for GameCube was being reworked as Saberman Stampede for the original Xbox, but that too got cancelled as well. Rare was still allowed to port the Donkey Kong Country trilogy onto the Game Boy Advance, and they remade Diddy Kong Racing for the DS, but after that, Rare's legacy with Donkey Kong was over. Donkey Kong had a middling career after the Rare buyout, mostly making appearances in more Mario games and having occasional spin-off games across the DS and Wii era. His only GameCube games required bongo controllers, including a few rhythm-based games called Donkey Konga, and a side-scrolling game called Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which later got a Wii port. It wasn't until 2010 when Nintendo announced a return to Donkey Kong's platforming roots, where Retro Studios, the makers of Metroid Prime, were making a sequel to the Donkey Kong Country trilogy for the Wii, with the release of Donkey Kong Country Returns. The game was received very well, though many fans complained about how Diddy Kong was treated like a power-up and not a playable character. Many hated the forced-on motion controls, and many players missed the original villain and baddies from the original trilogy. We now had a tribe of tiki enemies. They just weren't as memorable as bashing Kremlin crocodiles, vultures, beavers, and bees. The game later got a 3DS port. The graphics and performance were a lot worse on that compared to the Wii's, but many were able to forgive it because they liked how it ditched the motion controls. The game got an even better HD port for Switch not too long ago. 4 years after Returns originally came out, and Donkey Kong got another sequel for Wii U called Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, where DK's home got frozen by an army of Arctic conquerors. This time, Donkey Kong gets assistance from Cranky and Dixie Kong. Sadly, Diddy, Cranky, and Dixie are only playable with a second controller, which sucks for those who are single players who would rather play as them instead of Donkey Kong, but overall, I found Tropical Freeze to be a lot better than the original Donkey Kong Country Returns. And to be honest, I wasn't always the biggest fan of Donkey Kong Country. I always had more fun playing, the side-scrolling Mario games in comparison. I don't think they're bad games, though. I just never understood why, some people say, oh, Donkey Kong Country 2 is, one of the best games ever. I don't find it that great, to be honest. I personally like DK64 a lot better, but... So, going back to Tropical Freeze, that game also got a port for Switch 2, which DK's cousin Funky Kong was actually made playable in that port. I never played that one because I felt kind of ripped off after already buying the original for Wii U, so wasn't in the mood of paying for it again just to have a new character. So, After that, Donkey Kong remained dormant. Fans begged for another Donkey Kong 64 or another Donkey Kong Country game, yet Nintendo just wasn't delivering. We got a remake of Mario vs. Donkey Kong on Switch, which was originally a game on Game Boy Advance, which was kind of like a sequel to the Game Boy remake of the original Donkey Kong, where a lot of people consider that better than the original Donkey Kong Arcade, because instead of it just being a loop of like the same 3 levels over and over, this one they have more levels, so it actually feels like a full game instead of just a repetitive arcade game. So Mario vs. Donkey Kong was mostly a direct spiritual sequel to that, but it doesn't sound like a whole lot of people really cared for that game, so when they announced there was going to be a remake for it, a lot of people weren't too excited for that. So out of nowhere, we finally got a new Donkey Kong game that was added for the recently released Nintendo Switch 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza. So I just got done playing the main game, and not only is this one of the best Donkey Kong games ever made, but it's one of the greatest Nintendo games ever made. Admittedly, I'm still not used to Donkey Kong's redesign. He just looks so silly and oversized, but I'll admit he's a lot more expressive now. The gameplay has Donkey Kong roaming around these huge underground worlds as we gotta smash through the grounds and walls to find hidden bananas and treasures in order to upgrade Donkey Kong's strengths to make the game a lot easier. I was going to do a full playthrough of this, but I got so carried away with smashing everything. Like, I tried smashing, like, every inch of the wall and floor that I realized I wasted 10 hours and I wasn't even past the training level. I hadn't even met Pauline yet. You know, that's supposed to be something that happens early on in the game, but that's just how carried away I got. That's how fun it is to smash things in this game, and it's not to say that those 10 hours were wasted either. For I was able to collect enough pieces of gold to spend on future gate blocks, along with exchanging them for maps to find more bananas and fossils, and even then, that still wasn't enough for me to get through the entire game. That was only a small fraction of what you need to get through the entire game, so you can also find maps hidden in treasure chests buried underground. They spawn randomly when smashing through the ground or walls, so you can either take the risk of wasting time smashing through objects, or collect the gold through other means by just smashing gold on the overworld map instead. You're probably not going to get as much if you just rely on just smashing things that are visible. Sometimes you gotta get like deep underground to find the really good stuff, so the destruction in this game is permanent unless you warp to another level or choose to respawn the Terran with the map view mode. It's a good thing that resetting the Terran is an option, otherwise it would have been impossible to beat this game, since getting too carried away with the destruction could trap you and block you off from progressing further. There is a little side feature in this game called DK Artist, where you can basically make 3D sculptures, and you can even choose to destroy them. They even allow you to paint them. I haven't tried it out yet. I want to get the main game out of the way first, so I can't really share my opinions on it, but judging by what people have made online, it definitely looks very limited. It doesn't look like it gives you enough polys to make art the way you exactly want to. Like, you're probably better off using like a sculpt mode in a 3D program like Blender in comparison. So it's basically just a watered down version of Blender. But even with the limitations, I've still seen some pretty cool creations. I saw someone doing a pretty good recreation of Banjo's head from Banjo-Kazooie. I've seen someone make like Conker. And so, I haven't seen a whole lot from it yet, though, but there's definitely people who've tried it out, and despite the limitations, they're able to make the best that they could. But I can tell I'd probably not like it very much, because I don't like, if I'm using, like, art programs, I don't want to limit, like, how many strokes or things you can use to make art. You know, I like having as much resources as I can, not limited resources, but it still looks like a fun little side feature. So there are 16 levels altogether, and most of them are very huge and lengthy. Now, people owe Donkey Kong 64 a huge apology, because they claim the levels in that game were too big, but they feel small in comparison to the ones in Bonanza. Plus, DK64 only had 8 levels, not 16. So DK Bonanza can feel very overwhelming at times. There's just too much to collect and explore. It feels repetitive at first, but once you start upgrading Donkey Kong and get more abilities, the game becomes a lot more fun and exciting. Even with how tedious the beginning felt, I was still having a lot of fun with how destructive the game is. So down the line, DK befriends an odd-looking purple rock who happens to be a 13-year-old version of Pauline, Mario's ex-girlfriend, and Cranky Kong's captive from the first Mario game. So yes, this game does seem to take place in the past. and the ending kind of confirms this, but it just makes the whole timeline very messy. So you're telling me that in the future, Cranky Kong's younger self kidnaps Pauline, despite how his older self is right here in the game. It is so confusing. Did young Cranky Kong time travel, or are we going to get a game that explains that down the line? I don't know, but it's kind of messed up when you think about it, how young Pauline has like this really fond memory of befriending like a gorilla who helped her get back home, and then it's like in the future, she sees what looks like him, but he kidnaps her. It's like, yeah, that's got to be haunting. So, yeah, it kind of really messes with your mind there, the whole Mario Donkey Kong timeline. Otherwise, Pauline makes for a great partner for Donkey Kong in this game. For some reason, her singing is magical, and she can trigger spells to open up sealed objects and gates, along with awakening these powers inside of Donkey Kong called Bonanza powers. He's gifted these abilities by these elders that you can find across the lands, and so they basically teach Pauline how she can use her voice to awaken these transformations. So he can transform into other forms that are based on different animals. His first one is basically a Super Saiyan form of himself. He just grows bigger and darker, and he gets a hairdo that's made of bananas. And I just love the use of bananas in this game. There's so many creatures where like their beard or their eyebrows are made of bananas, their feathers are made of bananas. It's just really creative choice. And so DK's Bananza form allows him to smash through tougher walls and charge up his punches. His zebra form was one of my least favorites in the game. It just allows him to move slightly faster, and he can run across crumbling roadways. So the ostrich allows Donkey Kong to glide, which can come in handy during a lot of platforming sections. There's also 2 additional forms that Nintendo excluded mentioning in their directs. So these include the elephant form, which is the best power-up in my opinion. You will want to make sure that you max up all the skill points for the elephant form before going into the final battle, because that one really came in handy. The elephant is just a giant vacuum that can suck up the Terran and throw them back at enemies. So if you really want to go hunting for gold, you can't go wrong with the elephant. He is the best at destroying things under a quick amount of time. And then you can also carry up to 5 objects at a time, but that can also be doubled if you upgrade his skill tree. So admittedly, the tutorial for this form was horrible, because it's requiring you to spit out objects to progress, but they didn't bother telling you what button to press. And so apparently the button was right in front of you all along, they just didn't bother explaining it. So you hold the RZ button to suck up items, and then to spit them out, you just tap RZ. And so I had to look up online, and apparently that was a common issue. There was a guy who had to flat out make a video explaining it, and you can see how in the comments people were like, oh, thank you, I don't know why Nintendo didn't bother explaining it further, and I felt the exact same way. So despite the rough introduction, yeah, the elephant became my favorite form in the game. It's just the one that I found myself constantly going back to. It's so good that it almost makes the DK Bonanza form feel obsolete in comparison, but you still need the DK Bonanza form because it's the only way to smash through like really tough concrete. So the last form is the snake ability, which acts like Donkey Kong's animal friend Ratty from Donkey Kong Country 2. So basically the bouncing snake friend. So it's only good for making high or double jumps, but his controls in combat are terrible, making for the worst transformation in the game. I have no idea why they saved this for last, because I thought the elephant one would have been more fitting as the final transformation, but whatever. But yeah, I rarely ever found myself going back to using the snake ability. It was only needed to get up some tough platforming sections, and that was it. But other than that, yeah, I see no reason to going back to this character outside of that. So DK has other neat abilities, like being able to surf across surfaces by riding on debris, or using the debris to zipline across rails. You also got some minecart sections similar to the ones from Donkey Kong Country. Not a whole lot of them. You have like some projectile moments on those where you gotta gather items and throw them at enemies. And then there's also a few, similar to like the shrines from the Zelda Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, you got like these little miniature dungeons where usually they'll have like 1 to 3 bananas in them. So you got like combat challenges where you gotta knock out a number of enemies under a time limit. And then you got others that require a lot of puzzle solving or platforming. Some of them are even direct throwbacks to classic Donkey Kong Country levels. I found myself getting really tired of these. Like, they were fun at first, but there's just too many of them. So it came across where every time I found a new one, I kind of just went, another one. And there's so many where I go into them, and there's some bananas that I can't find in there, because usually some of them have like 3 bananas in them, and usually just completing the level gives you 1, but then there's 2 that are really well hidden, and there's some where I wasted so much time, and I just gave up. It's like, I'm tired of looking. It's like, I wasted 30 minutes in this area, I'm ready to move on. So, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of a lot of these little dungeon areas. They weren't very fun, in my opinion. So, the main collectibles are bananas. Collecting 5 of them gives us a skill point, which we can use in a skill tree to learn new abilities and max up Donkey Kong's stats. We can give him an extra bar of health, improve his destruction, and so on. You'll definitely want to max out as much as you can before the final battle. The final battle is really challenging, and you'll want to make sure that you have as much health, as much strength. Like I said, the elephant form, you'll definitely want that one to be maxed out, like to have where it can carry up to 10 items, and have it where it can speed up his attacks and all that, because it really comes in handy. So across the game, you'll find these bananium chips, or banana chips, and so in certain towns, you'll find these rock-shaped you'll find like these little rock creatures that are shaped like a banana chip, and you can exchange these chips along with some gold in exchange for full bananas. They start off pretty cheap, but as you keep spending and spending, they'll raise the prices to where it maxes out to, it'll take 100 chips and 300 gold just for 1 banana. So I'm not sure if there is a maxed out limit where, like, after you buy a certain number of bananas, will they be limited forever? But as far as I know, they seem to be unlimited. So by the time I finally found a chip exchange, I already had 1,000 chips, which really came from me spending 10 hours in the training level. So I was able to get roughly 10 bananas that quickly. So you'll also find fossils, which act similar to the purple collectibles in Super Mario Odyssey. They're level-exclusive currencies that can be used for buying outfits for Donkey Kong and Pauline. And some outfits come with exclusive stats, like extending Donkey Kong's Bonanza forms or his defenses. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the costume choices in this game. I hate how they're all almost the same thing. I mean, Pauline's arguably got the most unique outfits, but there's a lot of duplicates. I would have liked a little more variety, especially with Donkey Kong, because all he gets are ties and overalls, and he can change his fur color, but I don't think any of his fur colors really look right on him. It's like, I'd rather just stick with his default fur color. But I'm not a fan of him wearing overalls. It's like, why does he have the fashion sense of Roger Rabbit or Lanky Kong all of a sudden? I don't know. It would have been nice if you could have gotten, like, hats for him, or, like, a tuxedo or something. Instead, you just got, like, overalls. It's like, that's all he gets. And then you can get, like, a few different colored ties. That's it. It's kind of boring, to be honest. Too many of the colors are really similar, and I don't know. I'll say Mario Odyssey's was a lot better in comparison. There are also these house-shaped stone creatures that you can find, and you can pay them gold to create a hangout for DK and Pauline. In the hangouts, you can change your outfits, listen to music from the records that you might have found from enemies. Speaking of which, that's a real annoying gimmick, finding the records, because they're only randomly spawned upon defeating enemies. But the way the enemies are set up in a lot of levels, it'll be where you hit them and they end up flying off screen, and then right when they fly off screen, the record appears. So you see Pauline, hey, a record! And then all of a sudden it just falls off a cliff. It's like, that's almost every time a record appears, it falls off a cliff. It doesn't help that so many enemies are hovering over cliffs. Like, there are a lot of flying enemies, and so it really takes dumb luck to get the records a lot of the times. Personally, I'm not too crazy about getting the records. The music in this game, it's not bad, but it's kind of generic. None of the music tracks really stand out to me. Like, I'll say Donkey Kong 64 had a much more memorable soundtrack. So, otherwise, every first night you go to sleep at one of these hangouts, you'll get an optional cutscene where you have dialogue of Pauline in pitch black. She's having trouble sleeping, and she tries talking to DK about, like, their surroundings or something that just happened. At first, they started off kind of cute, but as the game kept going on, these got really tiring and real annoying really fast. It came to the point where I started skipping them every time. Poor Donkey Kong, he just wants to sleep, but every night, Pauline has to keep asking him, hey DK, you awake? Every single night. So, The main villains of the game are an evil company called Void Co. They are responsible for trapping DK underground and kidnapping Pauline. So they need Pauline's voice to awaken some wish-granting golden banana deep at the center of the earth. I can't even remember the name of it, and I'm not even going to try to remember. But so, Void Co. is led by a short yet hilarious monkey named Void, along with his henchmen Grumpy Kong and Poppy Kong. So Grumpy is the muscle of the team. He carries an oversized pickaxe. He's the most forgettable of the three. Then there's Poppy Kong, who is Void's secret agent of intel. She fights with stealth by using an invisibility perfume. So many complain that the boss fights in this game are not very good. Most of them are too easy and short, while some are just long and repetitive. There's a lot of repeat boss fights as well, but that's typical with so many Nintendo games, like ever since Skyward Sword. It's like expect to see the same bosses over and over. I'll admit, though, there's still better boss fights than the ones from DK64. I mean, I love DK64, but the boss fights in that were really bad. I'd say, like, the only good ones were the first two boss fights, but it's annoying how they rehashed them. And so, Void's boss fights were a pretty fun challenge, to be honest, as we chase him while he keeps summoning harmful objects that get in our way. We can even use what he summons to help get around other obstacles. For instance, he'll surround himself with lava and summon these stones to try piercing us. And so we gotta dodge the stones, tear off a chunk of the stone, and then we gotta use it to surf across the lava to reach Void and hit him. So it's up to Donkey Kong and Pauline to reach the center core before Void. And Pauline wants to use her wish to become a singer, while Donkey Kong wants to wish for more bananas. The gameplay was overall very fun, but it can get very exhausting. Some levels drag on way too long, especially the amusement park level towards the end. The levels aren't all that exciting, to be honest, just a bunch of islands floating over a void. Some aren't too bad though, like the island with oversized fruits. The theme park level was kinda cool, just too big, and it gets bogged down by being forced to hunt down 5 oversized switches in order to progress. I don't find the levels as memorable to look at compared to Donkey Kong 64. There was just something so charming about the levels in that game, but I don't get the same kind of whimsy as I did in Donkey Kong 64. But there's still enough fun and replayability in Bonanza, even if it doesn't recapture the eyes like DK64 did. DK64 just stood out more for its dark yet colorful visuals. Sometimes the gameplay can feel uncooperative in Bonanza. I've had a few times where I'm climbing as DK, but he loses his grip, despite how he's still on a climbable surface. In the theme park level, there's this muck stuff you're supposed to throw salt at to destroy it, but there were many times where I was trying to free these fossils that were stuck in the muck, yet every time I threw salt at the muck, the hits just didn't register, and so it felt like I was wasting resources. I was running out of sand, or salt, and yeah, so there are moments like that that can make the game frustrating. It's hard to say why this game is so good without spoiling the ending, so yes, there will be a major spoiler alert, but so as DK and Pauline make it to the planet core, they fight Void over the root that will grant them their wish. Void needs Pauline to sing in order to awaken the root, but she refuses. Void turns Donkey Kong into stone, which forces Pauline to have no choice but to sing in order to free Donkey Kong. However, it turns out that the thing they were after wasn't the real root, it was King K. Rool taking a nap as his big golden belly was sticking out of the ground. So K. Rool angrily rises up and punches Void into a flaming meteor. That's possibly the last we'll ever see of him, I'm not sure, but... So K. Rool is fueled with rage to see his old foe Donkey Kong. We get a meta joke on how K. Rool has been trapped down there for what seems like forever. So it's a pretty funny meta joke on how, fans have been wondering, where has K. Rool been? I mean, ever since Donkey Kong Country Returns, the character's been absent, and aside from Smash Bros. Ultimate, which was like his only return in recent years. So, K. Rool decides that he wants his wish granted as he heads deeper into the core of the Earth to find the real banana root. What's really great about his return is how the game was foreshadowing K. Rool's return all along, and some players might have not even noticed. But some of the first enemies we fought were these golden croc skeletons, and so during the final level, all of those golden croc skeletons are replaced with actual Kremlings. And then the bat enemies are now the vultures. I can't remember what they were called, but yeah, the bee enemies from the Donkey Kong Country games, they're now added to the mix. Even got the little Kremlings that hide inside those TNT barrels that would blow up on you, and I was just like, wow, this is fan service done right. So as we race across this dark final level, we finally face off it with K. Rool in a challenging boss fight that requires using all of our Bonanza forms. Well, not all of them, but mainly 2 of them, I'd say. I only found myself using the DK and Elephant Bonanzas. DK's Bonanza comes in handy with where you gotta charge punch his giant cannonballs in order to fire them back at K. Rool. Otherwise, I mostly relied on the Elephant form. It's great to just suck up the mess that K. Rool makes around, and you chuck his projectiles back at him. And so, K. Rool will try sucking you up with his cannon, and that's where we can use the Elephant to spit an object into the cannon and clog it up, causing it to backfire on K. Rool. So after we defeat K. Rool, DK and Pauline find the root as it creates a giant drill made of bananas that gives our heroes a ride back to the surface. But we get the iconic fake death and fake credit reel of K. Rool as he wakes up and chases after us. The fight isn't over. We dodge his attacks as we're riding up the giant banana drill. We gotta pick up chunks of the bananas and throw them at him until we finally reach the surface and we end up in New Donk City from Super Mario Odyssey. I swear, like, this whole final act sounds like a fan fiction, but this is from an actual Nintendo game, and I loved every minute of its absurdity. So, but I'll admit, though, it's kind of strange to have the city already named after DK. You can already see it. There's signs that say New Donk, along with actually seeing billboards that have the initials DK on it. Now, this is supposed to be an origin story for crying out loud. Wouldn't it have made more sense for the game's ending to cut to the future, where Pauline first became mayor and she decided to name this city after Donkey Kong, for she wouldn't be where she is today if it weren't for his help back then? I feel like that was a huge missed opportunity here. So our heroes can't celebrate Pauline's return home, for K. Rool is now in the city, and he has the root, which grants him his wish, and he decides to use it to take over this human world. So he transforms the city into his image, creating a giant statue of himself, and causing lava to rise out of the ground and burn down the city, and you see like all the monitors now have his face all across them. Are we just gonna sit here and ignore the fact that people probably died during this scene? That's a lot of lava. And so, we gotta race against the clock as we use our Bonanza forms to outrun the rising lava, reach the tallest building, and fight off K. Rool in a real final battle. So it's mostly just a tougher rehash of the first boss fight against K. Rool. But now he uses the root's power to embrace how rotten of a person he is. He gets a gruesome transformation. They call it K. Rool King of Rotten, but I'm just going to shorten it and call him King K. Rot. I think that rolls off the tongue a lot better. So, after a tougher and lengthier boss fight, K. Rool is defeated and sent flying. With no explanation, the city returns back to normal. It's just like when Jafar got defeated in Aladdin, how, all of a sudden all of his magic disappears. And so, Pauline is about to use the root's wish to become a singer, but she decides to instead use her wish to send Donkey Kong back home with a bunch of bananas. Donkey Kong is confused over her giving up her wish for him, but she assures him that she'll find a way to become a singer on her own, which, if you know how the Mario series goes, you know that she will grow up to get that wish. So, they don't get a heartwarming farewell hug or anything. I would have teared up if we at least saw like her give him a big hug before they left, but no, we just see Donkey Kong jump back into a giant hole that sends him back home, and that's it. So, I kind of wish for a more emotional ending than that. It feels like stuff just happens abruptly, but it's still more entertaining than the underwhelming ending to Super Mario Odyssey, I guess. So after the credits, the story still isn't over, and I can't tell you how it fully goes yet because I still haven't gotten through it all yet. But it's considered post-game content, so I'm just judging by the base game as it is now. So DK returns to the first level in Got Isles, which is now fully playable and has actual bananas that we can find that were not there during the original training period of the level. But as soon as we find the giant elevator, which was a giant creature that allowed us to backtrack, we're surprised to see Pauline is back, and she's nervous about a big performance she's about to pull off. She needs DK's help in revisiting the elders to help improve her musical powers. So I'm not sure where this will lead to, but I'm looking forward to finding out. If I were to make a guess on where this is going to end up, I'm guessing it's going to lead to New Donk City being a full playable level, because it just seems kind of obvious. I mean, we got a tease of it during the final battle, and not to mention, I've seen some screenshots of people like posting images of like all these different signs on like cities, so it's obvious that it leads to New Donk City being a full playable level. And I'm also guessing that's where you get Pauline's original outfits, because I've seen people post screenshots on how you get not only her red dress that you see like adult Pauline wearing in the modern games, but even her original pink dress from when she was referred to as Lady in the original Donkey Kong arcade game. But it still leaves me kind of puzzled. It feels so abrupt. They don't even explain how Pauline was able to find her way back into DK's world. Like, how did the elevator find her? How did she find the elevator? I don't know. So, yeah, admittedly, that's one of my biggest gripes with the story in this game. I mean, it felt like they were trying more than other Nintendo games, but they didn't feel fully committed to it. It still has that very typical children's fairy tale approach to it. It doesn't try explaining everything. It just, things happen because they happen. No logic whatsoever, and I kind of wish they tried a little harder, but it's not enough for me to hate the game. Just enough for me to go like, oh, this would have been even better if they tried a little harder. But I'm not going to deny, though, that final battle was epic. It was great to not only see the return of K. Rool, but they fully embraced him for who he is, because K. Rool was always a mixture of intimidating yet silly, and yet they brought it. They made him more intimidating than ever, but he still has a lot of silliness to him, like his fake death and fake credit reel, and then his final transformation where he embraces how rotten of a person he is. It's like, yeah, it's quite the opposite of what DK64 did, where throughout the game they present him as a more intimidating villain, and then during the final battle where you think it's going to be epic, it's so silly. This one I felt like they did a good mixture of it. It's like, oh, they know it's silly, but they made sure to make it look badass as well. And so, overall, Donkey Kong Bonanza, it is a fantastic game. It has a few shortcomings, but not enough to hold the game back. But the real question is this game better than Donkey Kong 64? Now, that's really tough for me to say. I think DK64 is a fun game. I love all 5 playable characters, each with their unique abilities like flying, hovering, growing, shrinking, invincibility, and super speed. It was fun to collect bananas to open boss gates, collect golden bananas to open levels, collect coins to exchange for guns, power-ups, abilities, instruments, health upgrades, and so on. However, DK64 did have too many pesky mini-games. The collectible requirements to 100% the game is really strict, especially getting the dang Nintendo coin. That's like one of the most evil objectives I've ever seen in a Nintendo game. So, some levels were way too dark, which made looking at the game kind of hard. It's kind of hard to see like where your character's at or where certain cliffs are because of how dark everything is. The controls in combat felt very clunky at times, and the boss fights were long and tedious. The difference is that DK64 is a game I was able to 100% complete, where I don't see myself ever being able to 100% complete DK Bonanza. There are some items I still haven't found, and there are many hidden bananas I've given up trying to get, and I am not in the mood of spending hours watching complete walkthrough videos to find every hidden item in this game. Even if you're not aiming to get everything, DK Bonanza still has plenty of great replay value. It's still fun to try getting as much as you can, even if you're not dead set on getting everything. Just trying to get as much as you can actually get is still fun enough. I'm sure you don't need every golden banana to fully upgrade DK's skill tree in this game, but you will need all of the fossils if you want all the skins and costumes, which that is quite unfortunate because some of them are really hard to find. While DK Bonanza is lacking fun additional characters like Diddy, Lanky, Tiny, and Chunky, DK's moveset and combat is much better than it was in DK64. However, I do really miss the coconut gun and the bongo instrument. DK's Bonanza forms are the closest things you get to additional playable characters, but they're treated more like power-ups based on DK's animal friends from the country games. As mentioned before, I think DK64 had better levels, but worse boss fights and combat. In comparison, DK Bonanza is a bigger and more exhausting game than DK64, but it's fundamentally a better game in performance and controls. It might be hard going back to DK64 and realizing that you can't smash through everything, or You can't have DK's more refined movement, speed, and platforming. But either way, both are great games, and I'm not going to say which I think is better, because both have their strengths and weaknesses. Both are games I highly recommend. So if you're wanting a game that focuses more on platforming and collecting, then DK64 might be the better game for you. But if you want a game that's more about freedom and has a heavier use of combat, much better combat I might add, then DK Bonanza is the game you're looking for. I give Donkey Kong Bonanza a 9 out of 10. That's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time, and have a great day.